Welcome.
Hey, how you
It's been
doing?
a while.
Has been a while.
Do you want to come in?
No, I'm not coming in. I just came to speak to you two,
Okay.
and say goodbye to them, say goodbye to you. This isn't a debate or conversation. This is my statement to you. I want both of you to know that I love Olivia more than you will probably ever know. And I really don't understand why either of you felt the need to say the things you've said about Olivia.
It's hard to hear that. If we didn't love him, it wouldn't matter. But it's hard to take words like that from someone that you really love. I just felt misunderstood. I've always felt like Olivia never gave me a chance. I felt like anything that I've done since they've been married and before, ever since I've known Olivia, anything that I've done has been twisted to mean something else.
There's a misinterpretation from what I said at some point in the past when we actually were talking. The premise is, if you yield yourself to unforgiveness, you are kind of a servant to unforgiveness.
Is that what you mean by, is that what you
That's
mean
what
by
I meant.
bondage?
That's what I meant by bondage. It can happen to anybody.
Ethan did not walk up to Kim and Barry's house like a son hoping for one more soft family conversation. He walked up like someone who had already made the hardest decision before the cameras ever caught his face. And that is what made the moment feel so uncomfortable from the very beginning, because he was not asking to be understood, he was not asking to be welcomed back inside, and he was not giving his parents another chance to steer the conversation into their version of what happened. He was there to say something final, something that had clearly been building inside him for a long time, and the message was brutally simple. If they could not accept Olivia, then they could not keep acting like they still had full access to him. That is the part that changes the whole scene from a normal family argument into a breaking point. Because Ethan was not just saying that he and Olivia were moving away, he was saying the emotional distance had already happened, and the physical move was only making it visible, which means this was not really a goodbye that came out of nowhere. It was the end result of months of silence, frustration, and a marriage that Ethan now believed had been left exposed for too long. What makes Ethan so intense here is not that he explodes, because he actually does the opposite. He stays calm, controlled, almost painfully direct, and that calmness makes everything heavier, because when someone is yelling, there is still a chance they are reacting in the heat of the moment. But when someone speaks this clearly, with this little interest in being persuaded, it feels like they have already grieved the relationship before they arrived. And for Ethan, the wound is not only what he believes Kim and Barry said about Olivia, it is what he did not say when those things were happening. Because underneath the anger, there is guilt. And that guilt matters. Since Ethan is no longer just looking at this as a son who was hurt by his parents, he is looking at it as a husband who feels like he failed to protect his wife when protection actually mattered. That is why his boundary lands so hard. He is not only defending Olivia now, he is trying to make up for the moments when he stayed quiet, when respect for his parents may have kept him from challenging them, when he let things pass because confrontation felt too uncomfortable. And now he is standing there with the emotional bill for all of that silence. Kim and Barry, from their side, may see a son who has changed, a son who is choosing distance, a son who looks like he is being pulled further away from the family they built. But from Ethan's side, this is the first time he feels like he is finally choosing his own household instead of being trapped inside theirs. And that is where the scene becomes so complicated, because viewers are left with a hard question that does not have a clean answer. Is Ethan setting the boundary his marriage needed, or is he closing a door so tightly that no one can ever walk back through it? The deeper tension is that Olivia is present in every word, even when she is not the one standing face to face with Kim and Barry, because Ethan has made her treatment the condition for his relationship with them. And that means the entire family conflict now has one emotional test. If they reject her, they lose him too. But just when it seems like the confrontation is only about the future, Ethan pulls the past back into the room, and one old phrase from Barry suddenly becomes the proof that some words do not disappear just because the person who said them has moved on. Because Ethan did not only come to say goodbye, He came carrying a sentence his father may not even remember the same way. The moment Barry tries to explain what he meant, the confrontation stops being only about Ethan moving away and becomes something much more uncomfortable. Because now the family is not arguing over a fresh wound, they are arguing over a memory. And memories inside broken families are almost never clean. Because one person remembers what they meant, another person remembers what it felt like. And somewhere between those two versions sits the damage nobody dealt with when it first happened. For Ethan, that old comment was not just a random sentence from a tense conversation. It sounded like a judgment over his marriage, a warning that his life with Olivia was somehow trapped, wrong, or spiritually off course. And whether Barry meant it that harshly or not, Ethan clearly carried it as proof that his parents did not respect the woman he had chosen, which is why his voice does not sound like someone bringing up an old misunderstanding. It sounds like someone finally naming the exact moment where disappointment turned into distrust. Barry, on the other hand, seems to reach for a softer explanation, almost like he wants to pull the sharp edge off the words and turn them into something more general, something about unforgiveness, something about a spiritual idea instead of a personal attack. And that is where the scene becomes messy in a way that feels painfully real, because maybe Barry did not think he was condemning Ethan's marriage when he said it, but Ethan is standing there as proof that the meaning Barry intended is no longer the only meaning that matters. That is why the apology does not land the way an apology is supposed to land, because when trust has already been broken, even a calm apology can feel suspicious. Even a gentle explanation can feel like damage control. And even the words, "I'm sorry," can sound too neat when the person hearing them has been carrying the pain long after everyone else went back to normal. Ethan's reaction makes that clear. He does not receive the apology like a son who finally got what he needed. He receives it like someone wondering why the softness is arriving now, in front of cameras, after the line has already been drawn, after Olivia has already been hurt, after the family has already become divided. And that tiny hesitation matters, because it shows how deep the gap has become. This is the part of the story where the audience should not be allowed to relax into an easy answer. Because if you only look at Ethan, it feels obvious that he is protecting his wife from parents who made her feel unwelcome. But if you look at Kim and Barry, they may see themselves as parents losing their son and being blamed for every crack in a marriage they already did not understand. And that is what makes this conflict so hard to watch. Everyone is speaking from a different injury. Ethan is speaking from loyalty and regret. Barry is speaking from a place that sounds like explanation, maybe even confusion. Kim is standing inside the fallout of a family system that is no longer moving by her rules. Olivia is not even the one standing there, but every sentence still circles back to her. The real weight is not just the old phrase itself. The real weight is that Ethan believes he heard things said about Olivia and did not stop them when he should have. And that regret seems to cut deeper than the argument, deeper than the move, deeper than the goodbye. Because now he is not only angry at his parents for what they said, he is angry at himself for the silence that followed. And once that becomes clear, the whole story shifts. Because maybe the most dangerous thing in this family was never one harsh comment, one awkward apology, or one fight on the driveway. Maybe it was the silence that taught everyone to choose sides before anyone learned how to tell the truth. What started as Ethan standing in front of Kim and Barry with one hard boundary slowly turned into something much bigger than a husband defending his wife. Because once Olivia became the name attached to every painful change in the family, the fight was no longer only between Ethan and his parents. It became a full family argument over who caused the damage, who carried the blame, and who was allowed to say they were hurt without being accused of destroying everything. That is what makes this part of Ethan's story so unstable, because from his side, Olivia was not some outside force who arrived and ruined a perfect family. She was the woman he married, the person he believed had been judged, criticized, and misunderstood, and the person he now felt responsible for protecting after too many moments where he stayed quiet when he should have spoken. But from the family's side, Olivia's name seems to sit right in the middle of the timeline where everything changed, because before her, Ethan was still more connected to the family system, still easier to reach, still part of the world Kim and Barry had built. And after her, there were boundaries, distance, arguments, and a version of Ethan who no longer reacted like the same son or brother they thought they knew. That is where the audience gets pulled into the harder question. Was Olivia being blamed because of what she actually did, or because she represented the moment Ethan stopped belonging to the family first. When Mariah enters this conflict, the story becomes even more complicated, because her pain with Olivia is not exactly the same as Kim and Barry's tension with Olivia, and that matters. Mariah had her own history, her own resentment, her own feeling that the relationship with Olivia became too negative, too heavy, or too tied to old problems with the family, and Ethan does not let that version stand without challenging it. He pushes back because he remembers Mariah having struggles with Kim before Olivia ever became the easy explanation. And that one detail changes the entire shape of the blame, because if the cracks were already there, then Olivia may not have created the divide as much as she became the person everyone could point to once the divide became impossible to hide. Still, Ethan's defense of Olivia does not erase Mariah's hurt. That is the uncomfortable part. A person can be scapegoated and still be involved in real conflict. A person can be unfairly blamed and still have relationships that broke down for specific reasons. And that is why this family story keeps pulling viewers back in. Because every time it looks like there is one clear villain, another wound appears and ruins the simple version. The music account conflict makes that tension concrete, because now the fight is not only about feelings, loyalty, or vague family energy. It becomes about trust, accusations, access, and whether Olivia was being painted as someone who harmed Mariah, while Ethan saw the situation as another example of Olivia being dragged into a story where the family needed someone to blame. And then Ethan does something that makes the whole scene feel less one-sided. He admits he should not have involved Mariah in frustrations from his marriage. That matters because it shows he knows the damage did not move in only one direction. He can defend Olivia and still recognize that he placed emotional weight on his sister that was not hers to carry. By this point, Ethan's marriage is no longer just a marriage. It has become a test that every family member is reacting to differently. For Ethan, choosing Olivia is loyalty. For some of the family, it looks like rejection. For Mariah, it becomes tangled with her own past with Olivia. And for viewers, the question keeps getting harder. Is Ethan finally becoming the husband Olivia needed? Or is he so focused on protecting her that he cannot fully hear anyone else's pain? That is why this chapter lands so heavily, because Ethan wanted to build a wall around his marriage to keep Olivia safe. But walls do not only keep people out. Sometimes they also trap every old argument, every apology that came too late, and every wound nobody knows how to name. By the time Ethan's boundary settles into the room, the scene no longer feels like a fight anyone can win, because the power has already shifted in a way Kim and Barry cannot easily reverse. And that is what makes the fallout feel heavier than the confrontation itself. Since Ethan is no longer standing there as the son asking his parents to understand his marriage, he is standing there as a grown man, telling them that access to him now comes with conditions. And for a family built on control, closeness, and obedience, that kind of sentence does not just hurt, it changes the entire structure. This is where the cost of choosing Olivia becomes painfully clear, because Ethan's decision may look strong from the outside, but strength does not erase grief. And even when a boundary is necessary, it can still leave people bleeding on both sides of it, with Kim and Barry losing the version of Ethan they knew, Ethan losing the comfort of being part of his family without conditions, and Olivia becoming the reason every relationship now has to be remeasured. What makes this even more complicated is that Olivia does not have to be standing in the driveway for the entire conversation to revolve around her, because she has become the emotional test of the family. Whether Kim and Barry can accept her, whether Ethan can protect her, whether the siblings can stop seeing her as the center of every rupture, and whether the marriage can survive being defended like it is constantly under attack. And that is the sad irony here. Ethan draws the line to protect his marriage, but the fact that he has to draw it this hard proves how unsafe the marriage already felt. If Olivia had felt fully defended from the beginning, this goodbye might not have needed to sound like a verdict. If Ethan had spoken up earlier, maybe his words would not now carry so much regret. But delayed loyalty has a painful weight, because when protection arrives after the damage, the person being protected can still wonder where that protection was when the hurt was fresh. That is why Ethan's anger does not feel random. It feels accumulated. It feels like every uncomfortable dinner, every loaded comment, every moment of silence, and every time Olivia was treated like a problem instead of a person, has finally been compressed into one decision. From Ethan's view, this is self-respect. From Kim and Barry's view, it may feel like rejection. And that is exactly why the scene is so hard to reduce into one clean side. Because parents can love their child and still fail to make that child feel emotionally safe. A son can love his parents and still decide they cannot keep entering his life without respecting his wife. A marriage can need protection and still struggle under the weight of how much protection it needed. That is the part viewers stay with, because nobody walks away untouched. The siblings become part of that loss too, not because they created the original wound, but because once Ethan cuts normal access to the family, the younger kids, the older siblings, and every unresolved relationship get pulled into the emotional blast radius. What began as Ethan choosing Olivia over disrespect becomes Ethan choosing one relationship while every other relationship has to adjust around it. And even later, when apologies come, when explanations are offered, when people try to name what they did wrong, the damage does not simply vanish. Because one apology cannot untangle years of resentment, and one boundary cannot teach an entire family how to rebuild trust. So the question hanging over this part of the story is not whether Ethan loved Olivia enough to defend her. He clearly did. The harder question is whether he defended her soon enough for that loyalty to still feel healing, or whether the line he drew only revealed that the damage had already gone too deep. What Ethan's choice really meant was never as simple as one man choosing his wife over his parents, because underneath that driveway confrontation was a much bigger shift. The kind of shift that happens when someone finally stops living as the child inside the family system and starts acting like an adult who gets to decide where his loyalty, his home, and his future belong. And that is why the moment still feels so heavy, because Ethan was not only defending Olivia from what he believed his parents had done, he was also trying to rewrite his own silence. For so long, Ethan seemed caught between two worlds that both wanted something from him, with Kim and Barry representing the family he came from, the rules he grew up inside, the expectations that shaped him, and Olivia representing the life he had chosen for himself, the marriage that forced him to look at those expectations differently, and the painful truth that love does not stay peaceful when the people around it refuse to respect its boundaries. That is why Olivia became more than Ethan's wife in this story. She became the line. She became the proof that Ethan was no longer willing to let his parents define what was acceptable in his adult life. She became the person whose treatment revealed whether the family could accept the new Ethan, not the quiet son, not the son who absorbed discomfort to keep everyone calm, but the husband who finally understood that staying neutral can still hurt the person standing beside you. And that is also why this ending cannot be wrapped up neatly, because Ethan's boundary may have been necessary, but necessary does not mean painless. And it certainly does not mean successful in every direction. It did not instantly heal Olivia's hurt. It did not repair the sibling tension. It did not make Kim and Barry suddenly understand him. It only made the fracture visible enough that nobody could keep pretending this was just one bad conversation. For Ethan, the meaning was loyalty. For Olivia, the meaning was safety. For Kim and Barry, it may have felt like losing influence over the son they once knew. For Mariah, it became more complicated, because she needed space to name her own hurt without being told that every problem with Olivia was just scapegoating. That is why the conflict kept spreading, because nobody was really fighting over one moment. They were fighting over the meaning of years. And the hardest part is that Ethan's protection arrived with regret attached to it. He was not only saying, "I choose Olivia," he was also saying, "I should have chosen her louder before." That difference matters, because delayed loyalty can still be real, but it carries the ache of everything it did not prevent. So when Ethan left that day, he was not just walking away from a house, a set of parents, or one impossible conversation. He was walking away from the role of the obedient son. And once he did that, every relationship around him had to decide whether it could survive the new version of him. If the family saw Olivia as the person who pulled Ethan away, Ethan saw Olivia as the person who forced him to finally choose. And that is why this confrontation still hits so hard, because sometimes the person blamed for breaking a family is really the person who revealed it was already breaking.